I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be talking about the fantastic Netflix series Supercell with cast member Josh Tedeku. And starting off, I wanted to ask a little bit about the way that you've developed this character of Taser. I feel like the show has such a wonderful identity in terms of the way it's filmed and captures life in South London. And I
Mm.
was interested in what were the most useful pieces for you in the script in really starting to figure out who Taser was going to be to you and just developing his personality and characteristics.
Well, I think, the first thing that we like kind of like, or I, sorry, the first thing that I like really, really took notice to is that Taser doesn't really say a lot. Like, and he doesn't really use a lot of slang like a lot of young boys in London do. He's very direct. Da, 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 da. So that kind of gave me like an instant, view of how he was, very in his mind, very tactical, very methodical. So yeah, and I took inspo from like other characters, and Ratman was a big part in helping. He lived that type of life in London for the like first 25 years of his life. It was very rough. It was very all of that stuff. So he was always on hand to tell me how it was like just naturally. And then for the essence of the character, he gave me two characters from The Wire to look at. He gave me Marlo and Mike from season 4, and they're very like quite like they don't have to do a lot. They don't have to shout to like impose their leadership or anything. They're very calm. They're very just like direct and stuff. So that's what I kind of wanted to bring to Taser, but in my own way. So yeah, with the performance was Taser, and like with the script, it was a lot of eyes. I remember Ratman said he clocked my eyes in the audition, and that's a big part of why I got it. Like a lot of eyes, a lot of just subtle nods and stuff like that. And I feel like it gives Taser this kind of eerie, dark energy that I wanted to bring. And but obviously there's the contrast when you see him at home and he's with his grandma. He's completely different to how he is with his boys. So I just wanted to bring all of that to life and the layers to life of the character. So yeah.
No, I love the way that you're describing that as well, because it also feels like that's kind of how he holds himself in terms of his confidence when he's trying to assert some sort of power over someone. And
Yeah.
so did that kind of almost lack of speech and dialogue at certain points kind of give you the physical side of his body language?
100%, 100%. Like you can even see in the show, like I've got my hands in my pockets a lot and all of that stuff, and I'm kind of just like inward, but like it's still like I still wanted to get that imposingness over everybody, and I think the boys respect him so much that even like even when Taser's silent, you can kind of just feel his energy around him, and they know what it is already. Even he doesn't have to talk; they already know what it is. And I feel like silence is one of the biggest weapons that you can even use, like to impose a sort of energy. Because like, especially with Taser, if you say something, da, 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 I think he only like really snapped a couple times, and that's when people really pushed him. But like, if you say something and he's trying to, maybe give you the evil or something, all he has to do is look at you, and then you're like, okay, well, bam, like it unsettles you a bit. It's more unsettling rather than, you know what I mean? And I feel like when you unsettle somebody, they start scrambling for, oh no, sorry, da, da, da. And that's kind of what I wanted to achieve, and hopefully I did. So yeah.
It's his original superpower is his silence.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly.
I also love the fact that you were touching upon that it's very different when you see him at home, and he has this really beautiful relationship with his grandmother that we get to see a couple of episodes in. And so how did you want that to be a very different space for him? It's like that's family. He can be completely relaxed and he's much more talkative with her, and there's such a level of respect that he has for her.
Mm. But yeah, I mean, that's an element I really really wanted to get right, because in I don't know about in the States, but in the US, in the UK, like a lot of these guys that are on the roads and stuff like that, like it's always respect your elders first and respect your mum and your dad, and like they're the ones that raised you. They're the ones you got all the love for, and you can't, even if you're out on the street doing the madness, you can't come back and bring that with you at home. That's just not it's just not how it is. There's a level of respect there. So I really wanted to show that element, because I feel like a lot of people misconstrue these guys and think they're like heartless human beings, but at home they can be some of the most loving beings ever. And I really wanted to bring that to screen and show that to audiences, and hope they really like kind of be like, oh, so like, man, it's not just, it's not one dimension. There's way more to this, and that's what we tried to achieve with that.
Right. And there's the added layer to that relationship as well with his grandmother, because his mom has left and he has a lot of resentment at, she doesn't care about me. And
Yeah.
because of that, his grandmother has kind of become a de facto parent, but then he's also a caretaker to her.
Yeah.
And so how did you want to capture that idea of it's parental, but it kind of goes both ways in an interesting dynamic?
Yeah, I mean that's it's so mad because you know as a young man, Taser had to kind of like when his mom left us, he had to step up and try and be that man of the house. But of course, he's always going to respect and love his grandma, and his grandma's always going to have authority over him. But when she's getting older and getting on, she can't really do what a mother is supposed to do. He has to take on some of them responsibilities, and it's like it's such a like interesting relationship, not only to play but to watch. And yeah, I feel like it harks on how much love Taze actually has for his grandma as well, because like those abandonment issues from his mum kind of almost turned into extra love for his grandma, because it's like at least you stayed, and that was something really really important that I wanted to get at. And obviously you see in the later episodes, as soon as Taser's grandma gets touched by crazy, it's like his whole world's falling apart, and he just lashes out at anybody and everybody, like as soon as it happens. Like there's no holds bars, and he does some things that a lot of audience members are probably gonna hate, but that's he can't shake that. He's a very emotionally immature person, because he's trying to be a man at 19. He hasn't really figured everything out, even though a lot of people when they were younger, including me, think they've thought everything out, but we haven't. But and there's just a level of immaturity there, emotionally, not like in any other realm. It's just like emotionally that just makes Taser see this red mist whenever something happens. And yeah.
And you mentioned Crazy, and the dynamic between the two of them is really interesting as well, because they're on opposite sides, but they haven't always been. And
Yeah.
it's very clear that Crazy is someone who really was someone that he looked up to and was very much a mentor figure in his life.
Yeah.
And now they're so opposed, and he literally reaches a point of like, I'm going to kill him, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, how did you want to create that relationship in a way that captures the anger and the distance in the present, but also reflected the past that they had with each other?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's actually mad interesting. Like, I could talk about this all day, but like me and Getz, we didn't even talk about our performances. I remember in the read through, when we ended both, I think we read all six. Yeah, when we ended all six, everybody's greeting each other in the room, like, "How are you?" Da 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 da. He's greeting everybody with a smile, da 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 da, and he comes up to me, and he just goes completely stone faced. He's like, man, oh, it gives me like the hardest dap up and like bumps me. I'm like, whoa, okay. So that's what we're doing here. Cool. And then like from that moment forward, obviously it was playful, but like it was almost like establishing that from the moment he meets me. He doesn't even know my name. And from that moment, he was establishing that. So like there'll be times where I'd walk onto set and I wouldn't even say hi to him. I'd just walk straight up to him. You know what I mean? And we just get it going. But in terms of our performances, I didn't even know he was gonna play it the way he did. So it kind of fell into place perfectly when he was kind of playing that silent imposing figure. And I was playing that silent imposing figure, because you can just see how everything crazy was trickled down to how Taser had become. And I think that really, really, really just strengthens the brotherly bond that you don't see on screen, and it transfers that to the now. Even though they hate each other, you can see how similar they are. Same for like many moments that happen later on in the show. They parallel each other so much, where it's like, even to the point that evil stuff they do, sometimes Taser does something and may regret it, but it's kind of come from that older father brother figure of Crazy leaking into him, because Crazy is just pure evil. Like, you know what I mean? He don't regret anything. But Taser now has to like deal with all these bad things that he was given from his older figure. And I loved how it came through so good, and we didn't even talk about it. It was just kind of connection. And like in real life, that like he's like such an older brother figure to me. Gets like, we sat in our trailers for hours just talking about music, writing, art. Like we always compared things. Like I think one of the days I went to a Kendrick concert, And I was like, it was like it's music, but it's such like a theater piece at the same time. And he agreed with me, and he kind of like broke it down, like performing on stage, how much of a theater piece it can be, and how similar, music and performing on stage and acting and all that can be. And we built a brotherly bond from there. And then just bringing that to the characters was so easy. It just felt so easy. And then the anger in the present day is like it reinforces how much this story is about love and about, if you touch one of Taser's people, it's over. Because it doesn't matter how much respect he had for Crazy or anything. The moment Crazy decided to pull that trigger and hurt Tiny, in Taser's mind, it was like, that's it. It's so like you almost killed one of my brothers. That is not, you know, that's not okay. And then that kind of just, yeah, reinforces how strongly Taser loves. No matter anything, whatever happens to his people, if it's something bad, it's over. So yeah, I just I'm glad that we shot that chronologically mostly, because after that moment with Crazy, I could just be in every scene I was around or in with Crazy. I could just channel that anger, and I was like, nah, we can't do that. So yeah, sorry, I
And it
rambled.
no,
Man.
I love that answer. And it's so great that it came out of the experience at the table read, was just like that
Yeah,
initial spark and
yeah,
synchronicity. Were there other relationships that you kind of felt like you were able to really tap into the idea of what they were going to be from the experience of doing the table read of all the episodes?
Um, I think with the boys were really funny. I mean, they're really funny in the show anyway. So like, we were all bouncing off each other on the table reading. Like even like as soon as we finished that day, I think even before we might have had some sessions together, but like just some like rehearsal sessions and all that where we could build our brotherly bond, and we were together the most out of like me and anybody else. It was always us. So we just built that brotherly bond from early, and then we could just it was just coming naturally, so naturally where we had that kind of like group of brothers. So yeah, that was definitely at play. And everything else, now that was probably like the first time everything else kind of came to play, or meeting each other. And then we read all the 6 episodes, and we just felt the world build around us. And we were like, okay, so this is how it is. We had been reading the scripts before we had them, but like reading them together was genuinely, it was one of the first times in my career where I felt the like feeling of, okay, so this is the world we're in. Let's do it. Like, let's work. I'm ready. So yeah.
And you were bringing up before, obviously, with the experience of when Tiny gets hurt, it's that thing of, it's my brother. It's not even just you hurt my friend. And
Yeah.
I think the show does such a good job, especially with Taser, of capturing that level of loyalty where it's not just friends. These people are my family, and it's kind of a second chosen family that he has around him. And so, how did you want to make sure that you were capturing that sort of familial feel within these friendships?
Yeah, it was a thing of it's funny. Me and Raps talked about this, and he was like, he wanted this group of boys to feel very naive in terms of like they're still 19 and below. They're young boys. They don't know how to run the streets. They can't just like first episode be like, oh, I want 10 kilos and then like ship them all off. Nah, like these are young boys, coming into their own and trying to become these figureheads of their block, but with barely any knowledge of it. And then there's a specific aspect that Raps wanted to capture, where he's like, in lots of other shows when there's gangs and groups and all that, they're all very rude to each other. Like they're all like, if somebody makes like a dumb decision or something like that, they're like, man, shut the f up, like like just dismissing them. But like this was very much like we were all together as a group, as boys. So like it didn't matter if somebody had made a dead joke or a specific dead like statement or anything. Like we're all kind of just like, nah, man, like it's kind of familial. It's like brothers. Like every time you see us together, it's kind of a feeling of cool. These guys are just all chill around each other. This is where they can be themselves and just happy and calm. And that's the energy we wanted to bring. We wanted to make sure that was prevalent throughout. So yeah.
And you were mentioning obviously that in the show, Taser's kind of, around 19, but then there's the element of who is he a few years down the line, but also with the added aspect of the discovery of these powers and the fact that that's been a part of his life for a few years at this point. And so when you were filming those moments that take place in the future, how did you land upon who you felt like he was going to be from all of that time and experience in between?
I think it's a big part of Taser's arc, even just within the season one timeline, because like in that year of him being 19, turning 20, a lot changes, and like his boys get taken away from him at one point, and like with Michael trying to get everybody together, his head's now in two different worlds. On one side of things, he's trying to protect his boys and make sure they get as far as possible in this big world that they're in, but on the other hand, now he's got powers. Now he has to deal with Michael and Sabrina and Andre and Rodney, and it's like, you know, well, I've got one responsibility on one hand, the other on the other hand. How do I, can I hold on to both of them? And I feel like what I tried to play in the future was very much so like that superhero type of thing became his main priority. Like you can see everything around them is trashed and all of that. So like I feel like by the time he's 24 and all that, his boys and all that are long in the past. And now he's discovered this thing that's bigger than him. And like he still has all that anger and all that inside of him. And obviously we don't know what's happened within them years. So maybe one of his boys actually even, I don't know, maybe got hurt and all that. And I wanted to play on that, which is why you see kind of so much rage in Taser's face when he like pulls out the blades and stuff like that, and he's so ready to get at these people because you never know what could have happened. It could have been really detrimental to his mental health, and just again when you hurt somebody when you hurt somebody that Taser loves and all that, he kind of just goes mad. So I feel like that became his priority to get revenge on the hooded figures, but yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see where the story goes and how what actually happens and how to develop it because within this first season we had so much fun with it, and I had so much fun with Taser's journey, just dealing with all these emotions, yet being so again emotionally, not mature. How do you grow? How do you figure things out? How do you hold on to things that you want to hold on to? How do you manage everything basically? And that's a big part of the story.
And the idea of the emotional immaturity is really interesting when it comes to seeing him at the very beginning of discovering these powers, because there's that part of him at the beginning that doesn't tell anybody around him because he wants to kind of try to understand it and learn it and control it. But then the moment that he feels like he's got a handle on it, it's like, I want to show off and I want to like really like have this grandiose like
Yeah,
showcase of it. My boys are going to think this is so cool and so exciting.
yeah.
And so did you want there to be this tipping point between like he's trying to handle it maturely, but then also the immaturity definitely comes into play?
100%, 100%. Like the first scene you see him in, you know, they're in a life-threatening situation. He's brought his boys out into the street and he still hasn't told them he can do this thing. You can see him try to do it and it fails. And then he gets stabbed for it. And it's like, your boys just think you basically just led them to their deaths. And it's like, you're still not telling him that he's trying to be this kind of like, don't worry, like mature, da, da, da. But as soon as he gets it, it's it's that 19-year-old again, just flexing, just being like, I've got this, we're gonna go to the top, da, da, da. And that, yeah, I'm glad you caught that because that's definitely like a flip that I wanted to show, and I just think it's so funny to watch almost because it's like a couple episodes ago you were all silent about this thinking you got it unlocked, and then as soon as you have it unlocked, everything just goes out the window, and you're just, yeah. So I think that's going to be interesting for people to watch and get a hold of, and yeah, man, I think it's crazy because I think he's actually quite mature for a 19-year-old. I mean, the boys that's why he's the leader. Like he's the maturest out of everybody and he's the smartest out of everybody. But I feel like maturity and emotional maturity are two very different things. And that second one is the most important between Taser's success and his downfall. So it's fun to play with that all throughout the series.
Right, because he's so intelligent, but like you said, it's just the emotions just take over in a way that he just doesn't have a grasp on it. He doesn't have a control on it. And
Yeah.
for a character like Taser that like you were talking about at the beginning, is much more quiet and kind of stoic around people. How did you want the emotional side to look when that just kind of when he just reaches that tipping point and
Yeah.
it's kind of like when cats get the zoomies and they just like don't have control of their own facets.
Yeah, literally. No, 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 literally. That's what like I wanted every moment Taser to like snapped to feel like, oh damn, like okay, like right, that's mad. Like I wanted to go full throttle on every single moment. I even remember that there's a moment in episode 5 where Taser gets his revenge on the girl Veronica for setting them up. And it's quite a touchy subject, a guy hitting a girl and all that, like how did you go about that? But I remember being on set, I was like, guys, if you're thinking about making this any less, like, if you're trying to strip it back, don't do it at all, because I want to go full out for this. I know I'm going to probably get some backlash. It's going to be a hard scene to watch, but I can't do this if I'm not going full on, because Taser's whole thing is the extremes are so mad. He can be so quiet, yet he can be so vicious and violent. And again, that's another element of why the boys kind of, without words, elected him as leader. Because if you say jump, he's jumping no matter what. Like, you don't even have to say the whole word jump. You just say jump, and he's, what I mean, he's gone and stabbed somebody. So it's like I wanted to show that extreme to the fullest effect.
And did you and Ratman have conversations about the powers and kind of what the rules of that were going to be, how that was going to come into play, so that you could really understand, how you wanted to play it in the series?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think he kind of broke it down mostly before we started shooting. But there was actually some things like I didn't really figure out until, you know, why we were shooting, like there's one element where if you use the powers too much, you get quite tired, and then like people start falling asleep and like uncontrollably and all that. And I didn't know that until like the first month. But I think it played it like that was a really good decision. I don't know if it was intentional, because I feel like that energy of everybody discovering their powers in the first few episodes, but Taser already knows he has it from the jump. I feel like that was a great element to have, because it's all well and good seeing people discover their powers, but we don't want to see all 5 of them just be like, oh my god, I have these powers. It was good to have at least one of them be like, I know what I'm doing here, but I'm just trying to get a little bit of a better understanding and hold on it. So yeah.
And you were bringing up before, you were talking about the sequence where he kind of like tries to enter into a fight because he thinks that he's going to be able to use his powers in that moment. And that's when he ends up being stabbed because he can't disappear and ghost himself.
Yeah.
And so how did you feel like the experience of getting stabbed was a real tipping point? Because it feels like it's the precipice for so much of the conflict and back and forth that continues over the next few episodes.
Yeah, that was a huge moment, and I feel like there's a moment before when obviously Diggody's character is kind of shouting, trying to joust him into doing this, and all he has to do is mention crazy. Again, this is where emotional immaturity comes into play. As soon as he mentions you're not like crazy, he's like he doesn't care what happens. He just goes, and then not being able to come out on top in that situation and getting stabbed is such a ego crusher for him, almost. And like it's like they have this thing in the UK, like where they kind of use like scoreboards. So like we're getting a score, like cool, we got him down, that's 1-0. You know what I mean? So like it's almost like they're down 1-0 now. Obviously the Euros are on, so I guess people can kind of gauge that a bit better. But like you're 1-0 down. Even in the hospital bed, he's like, F everything. We're doing this. And then, he just like he makes it his mission to kind of get back. He can't allow that to slide. Even in a moment where, as I said, none of these guys are rude to each other. They're all brothers. But when one of them is moving stupid, which is Andy, who plays Tuesday, listening to the diss track in front of Taser, that is probably the worst thing you could do. So that's one of the moments where we kind of see Taser snap, and everyone's kind of just like, oh, and you can even see it in the other boys' faces. I'm so glad they played it like that, where they're all kind of shocked and they're like bloody hell. And then Screamer, who's Taser's right hand, is the only one that's kind of just like, why would you do that? You know, this is such a touchy subject. Why would you do that? And I feel like all the performances just kind of came together perfectly to show what you described. So yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the moment where there's the fight where he steps in for Tiny, because again, it's another moment where he's like, I've got my powers, I've mastered this, and you all know that I have it now, so I can pull it out into the open. And it
Yeah.
doesn't come through. And so he just has to fight in such a ferocious way. And it felt like it was very emotional in the way that he was going into that. So when you were figuring out the choreography of that sequence together, how did you make sure that for Taser, it was very much led by the emotive side for him?
Yeah, it's funny because we rehearsed that fight for about 3 weeks before we even started shooting, and then the actual fight wasn't until like the last couple months of the shoot. So when we came back round to it, it was like I feel like the setting of the fight kind of very, very much got me into it. Obviously, I knew I wanted, like from the rehearsals, I wanted to go into it with a lot more emotion. And for Andre's character, um, it was very much just let me just mess up this little, you know what I mean? But for my character, there was so much more at stake here because he knows crazy, not like better than anybody else does in that vicinity. And then we got to that day. It was dark. It was raining. It was cold. I feel like that's one of the coldest winters we've had in England when we were shooting 2022. Yeah, and I was just like all of that plus the emotion and fury that was kind of just like there in the moment just made me go like just made me go full on. And I think I told Andre before, I was like, let's go all out. I feel like the stunt guys, they always are kind of like, all right, cool, we'll do it at 50%, we'll do it at 60%, da, 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 da. And I was just like to Andre, let's go, let's do this. Because again, Taser, everything kind of just feels like it needs to be on 10. So yeah, that's kind of how, yeah, kind of got the emotion out and really made it seem like that.
It's such a great character, and I love kind of all the detail behind everything with all of these sequences. So I appreciate you talking about this so much. Thank you so much, Josh.
No worries, no worries. I mean, I'm happy to. As I said, I could talk about this all day. So yeah, and I come from. I mean, I don't come from a background, but like, I didn't really like train in like drama school or anything. I got in, but I didn't go. And like when I was younger, a lot of the learning of the craft and everything just came from watching and dissecting things and all of that. So I kind of just have this nature where I like automatically just go into dissecting mode, trying to pick out everything. And I love talking about it because I'm such a nerd about this stuff. Like it's crazy. I've had a couple conversations about this recently because like I was, as I said, we're going to shoot another show, and like some of the guys are kind of just reading the scripts and like, okay, cool. But I'm like, no, but wait, like yo, like you're such a nerd. Oh my gosh. But yeah. I'm glad I'm like this. It's yeah, I enjoy it.
Likewise, it's the absolute best, and I appreciate all of your insights. So thank you so much for such a lovely conversation.
No worries. Thank you. Lovely to meet you.